is Andrew Dewitt. I know quite a few of y'all here through the years, and I want to welcome everybody and thank everybody for coming. Today, we wanted Chris Tilton and Kim Thomas. We're going to talk about, as we said, how to get going with the building process. I know a lot of people out there, our clients in the past have had a little bit of lack of knowledge, I guess, on how to get started, and what we want to do is try and bridge that gap and give everybody an idea of the process, because it can be quite a large undertaking, especially if you're not familiar with the process. And to that, they gave me the mere introduction job, so the real knowledge is going to come over here for these two. So Kim Thomas is going to start us off, and then Chris Tilton will follow up from there. So again, thank y'all so much for coming.
Well, good afternoon now. It's not morning, it's officially afternoon. I am Kim Thomas. I'm the Director of Operations for Dewitt Tilton Group. We are located in Thunderbolt, basically on the corner of Victory and Skidaway. My background a little bit is I do carry a degree from the Pittsburgh Technical Institute for computer aided drafting and design. Kind of followed. We have medical people in my family and in construction. So I followed my dad in construction. Kind of been doing that with him ever since I could. Whatever the boys were doing outside, I was doing. Sixth grade, I was on a roof snapping chalk lines and nailing down shingles, and been doing it ever since. So I just love the construction field. I've actually worked with Chris for about 12 years now. We started in South Carolina together, where we did custom residential, and now we're doing commercial here in Savannah. So that's very exciting. What I'm going to speak about here briefly is zoning and permitting. Obviously, zoning plays a large part in the land that you're looking for. So what we like to, when people are first initially looking for a property or want to purchase, we are encouraging them to really get with their real estate agent to kind of get the property that they need in the zone that they need for the building or in industry that they need. That's a big part in location, and so after that, we have after you identify the areas of your zoning and what you'd like to be, then we actually really want to get a little bit more in depth to go to the county, wherever the land is, where you can then find out what your zoning needs are. And I lost my place in my paperwork. I apologize for that. And there's also some areas where if you're not zoned according to what you want, you can go to municipalities and actually ask them that, for a zoning ordinance, in that where you can change the ordinance for what your zoning needs will meet. Once you determine all that, we again visiting your local government for that parcel, inviting your land attorney, your civil engineer with you. If you particularly have a contractor of record, they'll help you navigate through those procedures. It can be very time consuming and very in-depth for the average person that really is not sure of how to start this process and continue on with your property and your endeavor there. We also, after you become familiar with all those areas, then permitting, of course, then plays another aspect of what you need to do to make plans. And once you get plans done, then you have this series of review boards and planning commission meetings, so they can direct you that right way. Again, education is the key. So what we try to do is educate, again, lead people the right direction in the zoning that they need, and then helping them through the permitting process.
So your agent, I'm sorry, just because I'm trying, it is informal, so I'm just throwing out some. So as far as when you're purchasing the property, the agent is your first person that's going to talk to you about zoning. Is that correct?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. That's
For
the
you to
good
know
first lead.
what area, what kind of zone, where it's, okay. All
Right, and our abilities to rezone if it's not quite the zone that you want, but it's obviously good to look forward. That's your zoning requirement in the beginning of what you need. Each municipality is different, so as far as that goes as well, so.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
My name is Chris Tilton. I grew up in the low country of South Carolina and in Savannah. I went to St. James School. I graduated from BC. I was a year ahead of Andrew. I graduated in 85. Andrew graduated in 86. I went to Georgia Tech. I graduated in 1990 with a degree in building construction, and I've been building ever since. About 3 years ago, Andrew and I decided to start Dewitt Tilton Group. And we were really kind of focusing on commercial construction, and we really wanted kind of a homegrown construction company that knew Savannah and knew the people of Savannah. So here we are. Currently, we're working on the Living Goods retail showroom on 80, right next to Spanky's. We're working on Jeff's Beverage Center. It's a big retail beverage center with an additional suite next door in Richmond Hill, and we're working with Ultima MC in Dublin on a building for them, and working on a number of other projects. And again, like Andrew said, we've noticed in the last year, the lack of good quality sites, and B, the high demand for industrial and heavy commercial sites. Just in the last 30 days, we've met with clients wanting to purchase sites, and we've gone to, we found 3 sites, 2 of them were already under contract, the third one didn't work out. We put a backup contract on one of the sites, and to be honest, there's just a huge need for industrial and heavy commercial sites. What I'm going to talk about, first off, is site work. And a lot of people, when they find a site, they think, wow, that's the big expense, and that's where a big mistake happens, because the sites that are left in Savannah, they're left for a reason. They're usually poor sites. When I say poor sites, it mainly has to do with the dirt. And I know most of you here understand that, but I'm going to kind of back up and just explain it as if it's a new topic. When you buy a site, the first thing you should always do is get somebody to do soil testing and analysis. You have to know what the structural capability of the dirt is. All dirt needs to be able to withstand 1,500 to 2,500 pounds per square feet. Most of the dirt that's on the sites that are left won't come near that. You hire a company to come do borings. They bore down 30 feet. They analyze the dirt, and they send a report, usually back to you as the potential purchaser. And hopefully, what we're trying to tell you is you have a professionals. Your agent is obviously one of them. Dewitt Tilton Group is a good one to have. They can help you analyze the dirt, and that's part of what we do. We do all this at no cost. We're working with somebody in this room right now on that exact thing, trying to figure out what kind of dirt they have. But basically, most of the dirt out there is non-structural dirt, and you have to remove the non-structural dirt and bring in structural dirt. And to put it in terms you may understand, dirt's quantified in a square yard, which is basically, if you think of a box, a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot box, that's a square yard of dirt. And to remove 1 square, a box of dirt, costs $8 to remove it, and it costs $18 to bring it in. So think of that on a site that's 3 acres, how many of those little boxes it takes. Now, we've dealt with clients that, got a good deal on the dirt and ended up paying more in site work than they actually paid for the dirt. So in the Savannah market, Pooler, everyone's familiar with Pooler gumbo, and it's Pooler gumbo for sure. In Pooler, most of the dirt, it's mud. When it gets wet, it has no structural capabilities. It's pure muck, and it has to be removed. Now, you can either bridge it or you can remove it and fill it, but either way, it's going to be a big expense. So when we bring in structural dirt, we remove the dirt that's poor dirt. A lot of times you can use it for behind the curbs and for landscaping, because if you can keep it on site, you're going to save a little money rather than hauling it off. And then you bring in structural dirt. You roll in the structural dirt in 1 foot lifts and roll it in to get that compaction. Once it's all rolled, you hire the engineer that usually did the initial soil testing. They come and check the compaction, and once you get, we call it getting back to zero, you can build. And to compare it to like a pad-ready site, there's a lot of pad, if you know, Westside Business Park is not pad-ready, but Chatham, is it Chatham, right there on 80?
Chatham Parkway.
Chatham Parkway. No, right there on Chatham Parkway and 80 on the right, where Bahama Joe's just went. You know, those lots in there were pretty much pad ready. And when we say pad ready, you know, you got to bring in a little bit of fill dirt, but they're ready. The structural dirt is there. So perhaps those lots were more expensive, and in the grand scheme of things, by the time you totaled it back to zero, they probably were not. The next thing to consider are utilities. Now, I know when I was in residential construction, you know, utilities, you bring the water and sewer out 5 feet and they bring it to it. Well, in commercial construction, it's way different. You have to know a couple things. One, you have to know what utilities your building is going to require. And one of the big things, if your building is over 12,000 square feet, it's going to have to be sprinklered. So you have to run a fire line. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but typically your fire line's an 8-inch line, and it runs to a vault. And just the backflow preventer on a fire line is $8,000. So you got to run the line to a vault, backflow preventer, and then run it to the setup inside the building. Now, if your building's under 12,000 feet, now the other thing is, if you have a site, you have to check the water pressure of the water main, because if that water main doesn't have enough pressure to supply a sprinkler system, then you can't sprinkler the building with water. You have to do it either with a holding tank or what we call a dry system, which is significantly more expensive. Then you have your water, your sewer, and your storm drain. And these are components that when you work with a civil engineer, they'll help you understand. But when you see a site, those are just things that automatically ought to click in your head. Okay, we know the dirt's bad. What about utilities? Where are the utilities? And if you start talking like that, people think you're dangerous because you know what you're talking about. So the other thing is, if you're doing a building for more than one tenant, you're going to need multiple water meters. You're going to need multiple backflow preventers. And again, all these expenses add up. The next thing is access. Again, there's a lot of sites. All the prime sites are pretty much gone, but there's a lot of access that have secondary access. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm not retail. I don't need to be on Highway 80, or I don't need to be on Blue Parkway. Well, one of the costs, you still got to get to the lot, and you got to have an access that meets the current development standards. It's going to have to be so wide. It's going to have to be asphalt. And again, those items add up. Along with access is your parking requirements. Again, offices, retail, they all have different requirements, but most of those are going to require asphalt parking, and asphalt parking is another expense. If you're doing industrial, your truck court's going to have to be heavy-duty asphalt, which again is another expense. And also with access, you need to know, is there any easements? We're dealing with a client now that has a site, and they actually own the lot next door, and on the plat there's a cross easement, meaning that they come into their access, cross their parking lot, and go to the adjacent site. Well, that's all well and good, but the question arises, who's going to pay for the maintenance of that access? If I own that access and I'm granting a cross easement to my neighbor, I need to charge them a CAM charge to be able to help maintain that access, because there's going to be expense. Instead of one user using the access, if that's a multi-tenant retail building, you could have 6 users using that access. And again, things that you need to consider that you may not consider. The next thing is the flood zone. And this has become a hot topic in not only the commercial market, but also the residential market in Savannah, Georgia. Let me give you a little history. It's the Stormwater Management Act. And prior to the 1980s, stormwater management simply meant flood control pipes designed to convey stormwater runoff to aquatic resources. Little consideration was given to stormwater quality. While this approach worked well to reduce flooding, it didn't address the negative impacts that land development can have on the health of the rivers and the marshes. During the 1980s, communities began to realize, and in order to protect these natural resources from the negative impact of land developments, both stormwater quantity and quality needed to be addressed. In 1990, Phase 1 of the National Pollutant Discharge Illumination System, better known from its acronym NPDES, was introduced. In 1999, Phase 2 of the NPDES was implemented, with these two acts, local communities began to revise and expand their local stormwater management. In 2009, the MPC began work on the Coastal Stormwater Supplement to the Georgia Stormwater Management Act. And finally, in April 2012, the MPC implemented the Stormwater Management Ordinance. So what does all that mean? If you are in a flood zone, first of all, if you are in a flood zone and you're looking to buy a lot, that should be a red flag. Right away, you say, wait a minute, we're going to have some issues. You're going to have more issues with a lot in flood zone than a lot out of the flood zone. And same reason why that lot in the flood zone should be cheaper than a lot outside the flood zone, because you're going to have to remedy some of the issues. And with the new Stormwater Management Act, to make it simple, for every load of dirt you bring in, you have to take a load of dirt out. Now, in the residential arena, there's houses that skid away. People want to add a garage, and they basically got to build a pond in their backyard to add a garage. Well, think of it on a larger scale, on a commercial application. If you're in the flood zone, you have to be up above whatever that flood requirement is, 13, 14 feet. But you got to bring the dirt to get up there, but you also got to remove enough dirt to equal what you bring in. So, and a lot of times your civil engineering costs are going to be significantly higher when you're dealing with that, because the counties, they're no fools. You got to manage the dirt you bring in, the dirt you take out. You do as-built surveys of the dirt. So it's just it's a huge issue, and we really want people to be aware. Dealing with a site in the flood zone takes special consideration. Along the same lines are wetland delineations, and living in Savannah, we're all familiar with wetlands. And we are working with a client in Pooler that bought a site that he got a great deal. He paid $135,000 for a 2.55 acre lot in Pooler. Well, when it comes to it, the lot's less than an acre when you take out the wetland considerations. And because of that, they're forced to actually build a portion of the building in a drainage ditch. And furthermore than that, the dirt's so bad, they're required to put helical pilings in. And so suddenly, the cost just went bam, bam, bam. The dirt was so poor, they couldn't even remove, because whatever they removed, there was just more poor dirt underneath it. So they had to drive helical pilings, which are big concrete and steel pilings that go down, and they actually, the resistance of the force going down support the building. But they're 1,500 feet. Just, he was naive and not educated enough, like all of y'all are going to be after today. The next thing is you have to understand, and I was talking to someone beforehand that moved here. We have in metropolitan Savannah, we have Garden City, Port Wentworth, City of Savannah, Chatham County, Pooler, Richmond Hill. Every one of those municipalities have different sets of rules. We're building in Richmond Hill. Richmond Hill actually is one of the more stringent rules. In 2014, the National Building Code required all buildings to have special inspections. And what that means is you have a third-party engineer come and inspect the same thing that the municipality is inspecting. Now, we've always done it. It's a good idea just to have someone else put their eyes on it. But Richmond Hill enforces that, and Pooler doesn't quite yet enforce that. And it's in the National Building Code for 2014. So you have to know what each municipality. Number one, after you figure out site work, flood zone, figure out where you are and what the rules are. Because it's imperative, because each municipality, Richmond Hill until February of this year, required any building over 5,000 feet to be sprinklered versus what the national was 12,000 feet. Now, it's really absurd that they can do that when the national's 12, but they did it, and they had enough feedback where they got resistance. They had the final reading in February of this year, and they just overturned it. But again, if you had a 6,000 square foot building, I mean, to sprinkler the building, it's $2 a square foot plus all the utilities to get to that sprinkler system. So, and believe it or not, in Savannah, in the metropolitan Savannah area, we have earthquake zones. And God forbid you find a site that's in a flood zone and an earthquake zone. But people find it, and they get a great deal on them. But the earthquake zone obviously will have much greater requirements on the foundation system. So, what we're trying to do, we encounter it every day. We have 3 of our last 4 projects have people that walked into our office and basically said, hey, I want to build the Gretchen Green School of Dance is a prime example over on Wilmington Island. She came in with a piece of paper and said, I want to build this, but I don't want to go spend $30,000 with an architect to figure it it out. Well, Kim works in our office, and people come into our office and say, hey, I want a 10,000 square foot building in Richmond Hill, and within 2 days, she'll have a little plan of what it looks like. We provide plans. We can hire engineers. You need an advocate for you, because unfortunately, if you go to an architect and you go to an engineer and you go to these different people, you're paying retail. And you're paying retail without someone else kind of looking after you. If it's not us, get someone who specializes in this. And for us, we call it the cost of doing business. Your fee is $0. And you know what? We get some, we lose some. That's just the way this world is. But you need to have someone who will be your advocate and go to that civil engineer, not to mention, but that's, puts in too much storm drain, or puts in something that you don't know. But wait a minute, do we really need all those drop inlets? And have someone go to bat for you.
And let me interrupt by that and by saying we really see that a lot. And as an example, classic example, excuse me for interrupting, Chris, was
I'm used to it.
a lot of plans might have underground concrete pipe to drain your site. Costs a lot of money to put underground concrete pipe, where you can achieve the same effect and the same requirements by just sloping the pavement and sheet flowing it off. And you can save $50,000, $75,000 just by that simple change. And those are the things, if you don't know to ask and you don't have somebody in your corner to point those items out, you're never going to know. So that's why it's important, as Chris was saying, to have that advocate in your corner who's going to, look, there's a thing, value engineering, and engineers are busy too. They want to get it done. They're going to put them, not knocking them. They're exceptional in this town, but value engineering is also a very important aspect.
Well, along the same lines, when we started Jeff's Beverage in Richmond Hill, it was the old Citgo gas station. So we had to tear down the Citgo gas station, we had to dig up the tanks, had to get all kind of testing done. But the engineer showed to remove all the asphalt. And so I'm looking at it, I'm like, Jeff, I think we can save some of this asphalt. So sure enough, we saved all the asphalt in the rear. We saved $60,000. And so again, it's just having that person saying, wait a minute, there's another way we can do it. Also, you need to be aware of deed restrictions. Now, deed restrictions, as many of you know, are a specific restriction on a site. For example, we're building the living goods. They own the lot next door. They may be interested in selling it, and they will probably put a deed restriction that an appliance or mattress store can't go next door. Now, you have to be aware, we are familiar with a couple that bought a out parcel of a retail shopping center that had a big anchor, and they wanted to put a restaurant. Well, unbeknownst to them, there was a deed restriction that the anchor had the right to determine what kind of restaurant went in there, and they didn't want that restaurant. So they spent over $1 million on the dirt, and they couldn't build it because they didn't know there was deed restrictions. The last thing is architectural and engineering drawings. And again, a lot of the times when you're looking at a lot, you're not thinking about the big picture. And we heavily encourage you to at least get some idea of the building costs. And again, with us, we can provide plans and building costs. John, you can attest to this rather quickly. And give you a good idea of what the building looks like, any budget for the building. We can even include the civil engineering. We have structural engineers and mechanical, electrical plumbing engineers that can do all the work for us. And the good thing about that, we are an advocate for our clients. So, in closing, and we respect everybody's time. We want you to get back to work. So what do we hope you gain from this workshop? An understanding of both the zoning of the potential site as well as the zoning needs of your business. These need to be compatible. And if they're not compatible, like Kim said, request a zoning change. And most of the time, especially if you're going down, industrial, heavy industrial, the most intensive zoning, if you're going to commercial or something like that, it's usually not a big issue. Garden City, usually you can go from rural to industrial because everything along 80 is going industrial. But if it's something, a site you see, ask. Second, understanding of the things needed to obtain a permit. The requirements of different municipalities and the time it takes to obtain permits. Now, Kim touched on it, but we have experienced it can take up to a year to get a permit if you get any resistance. 6 months if everything goes smoothly. The importance of ascertaining the quality of the dirt on the site, as well as knowing the amount of dirt required for not only the building pad, but also the horizontal improvements. Now, when you build a site and you build a building, all your roads and parking lot also have to be on structural dirt. So if you're building a 10,000 square foot building, that's a small piece of the pie. All the dirt for the road and your parking. If it doesn't, it's going to be gone in a couple of years. Next is an understanding of the utility needs of your building, as well as the necessity of locating existing utilities on the potential site. The importance of locating the access of the potential site, as well as any potential easements. Understanding the additional cost and time required for a site that's located in a flood zone. Understanding in which municipality the site is located and knowing the different requirements for each municipality. And finally, understanding the design process requirements and the timing. So again, we want this to be as informal. We want, if you have a question, please ask us. And if you have anything down the road, call us. We will help anybody.
I got a couple things I want to add, just as some examples, if y'all don't mind, just sitting here listening to it. Kim was talking about zoning, and let me say this. I've been doing commercial appraisals in Savannah for 25, 30 years. I've seen a lot of stuff. It's pretty amazing in that aspect of all the different things you see. Let me tell you how zoning really specific it can be. And some of these Savannah ordinances you can read and they make zero sense. But here's a prime example. If you got Pooler, Georgia, and you're in a C2 zone and you want to build a building with office up front and storage in the back, you submit those plans. If you put storage on that plan, you're going to get denied. You put inventory on that plan, it'll get passed. That's how specific it can be. That's how careful you have to be in what you do. Rex probably works with a lot of commercial realty, knows a lot about it. It is really interesting how that stuff works on zoning, how precise the verbiage is and different things. And it's the same exact building. One word on a plan means the difference between getting passed and not getting passed. I made some other notes. As an appraiser, some of the things I see that important that us and Chris talked about as an advocate, that's important for you to remember. When you go design a building, your design and how you do it is very important to maximize your building. For instance, flex space. We have some people want to build a flex space, 5 bay, whatever else, or retail strip centers. Well, there's an optimum depth to those buildings. You want to be aware of, 70 feet, or your optimum width. What's your optimum size to rent those spaces? Be mindful of those things. And again, when you work with us and you work whatever, use our experience, having done those things, and use your experience of your commercial broker to know what you want to do. Everybody probably has a dream of what they want to do, but there's certain properties going to lease better. You don't want to go build 4,000 square foot retail base because they're going to be hard as heck to rent. You want to build smaller, then you can expand and make it vinyl if you need bigger. Real quickly, maximizing the site is the other thing, and I've seen this with in appraising. You buy a 1 acre site, a 2 acre site. You want to have the forethought when you go put your building on that site. I've seen this with an office building one time. They paid $500,000 for a site and put a 4,000 square foot building on this 1 acre site right smack dab in the middle of it. Well, you couldn't go finish redeveloping the site. You've kind of, because of where you place your improvements, you've cut your site in half and you've kind of killed your value. So you're overpaid. You're not maximizing that site. And again, these are things, when I'm really pointing out, things we've seen that we think we can help. Obviously, the part of the seminar is certainly us wanting to identify ourselves to you and try and, obviously get some business leads out of it. But we have that experience, and that's what we're trying to say of extensive building experience, extensive commercial real estate experience throughout the Savannah area, and that's, I really want to give you some examples of that, of things we have seen, I've seen, that have really helped us with our working with our clients and so forth. But questions for anybody, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, have y'all worked with modular commercial construction and or shipping container construction? And if so, is the process of getting it permitted and approved different or longer? Or
Well, we work with interior finishes dirt, you know, with some of those. The problem was we were working with a client Pooler that we were building a building, and he's had a specific need, and the design that dirt had was perfect for it. The cost blew them away. As far as containers, we have not. Now, one other thing I forgot to mention, a lot of times you have to be creative. Find a 3-acre site with a 5,000 square foot building that's falling down. And they, you know, the guy comes in and says, hey, I want $1 million for this. You're crazy, 5,000 square foot building falling down. Well, if you remove that building and you got a pad ready 3-acre site that you spend $1 million for, that might be a deal. And so a lot of times you got to think outside the box and think about, you know, because unfortunately there's only so much out there that's raw. A lot of times you got to find that deal. And that's what a lot of people are doing, particularly in Garden City along 80. Yes, sir.
Could you comment on the status of the 1,500-acre super site over in Pooler off 16? Why is that not developed in 15 years?
Andrew, you probably have more experience about that than I do.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, the state of Georgia is holding that site out for a manufacturing site. Manufacturing jobs are really hard to come by. Obviously, there's tremendous demand for warehousing, but they want manufacturing that's going to generate significant more high-paying jobs. So we're very close to the Volvo site that went to Charleston. That's my understanding, and you're correct to think that, yeah, they ought to put somebody on it, but we don't have a lot of manufacturing coming to this town. We don't have a lot of manufacturing probably going anywhere in the country too much, but Brad's had a question.
Yeah, just a couple years ago, they agreed to reduce the footprint. They wanted to do the whole thing, so they agreed to go down smaller, and that's part of the reason why the species is there now.
The state is marketing.
Right, it's state-owned
Right.
property. I think the port technically may own part of it, but again, state-owned economic development engine to be able to attract people and kind of do something, that's fine. And you got a 500,000 square foot warehouse, you might have 30 employees or something. So for a warehouse versus a manufacturer, where you're getting, you know, hundreds of people in there, higher paying jobs. So they kind of weigh that cost benefit.
If they get willing to break it up into smaller,
They have agreed to do that, and I don't know where they are now, but that's part of the reason this species is there. I think this species is probably on 100 or a couple 100 acres.
130 acres.
My question was about the breakdown. Would be good for me to know, and I always have to process this. Say I've got a 15, 30 acre site, it's got trees on it. What is the time frame to go from going to get it inspected? Maybe it's got a little wetlands, you gotta get that checked out, you gotta go through the permit process, you gotta do a plan. What's kind of ballpark of times that can kind of?
Yeah, when you bring wetlands in, you know, obviously it's gonna take longer. I mean, I would say 12 months, but if it's a site without wetlands, by the time, you know, you go inspect it till, I mean, when we're involved, you know, and we advocate push, I mean, we can usually have plans and to the permitting stage in 6 months, and probably permits back in 9 months.
To what stage are you referring to?
I
Right?
was saying,
Ready to build.
Yeah, I got it. Well, yeah, when you're ready to pull the trigger on being able to build something, yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, and again, every municipality is different. I mean, it depends also on, like in Pooler, when you develop a new site, they're gonna do 3 readings and they're once a month. And then once you have the development permit and you go to a pre-con meeting, then you submit for your building permit. So, you know, the permitting process, like we said, is usually 6 months. For us to draw plans and have structural and mechanical plans back, we usually can turn that around in about 60 days, depending on the size of the project.
So you've got whatever, 6 or 9 months to build, or whatever you're building.
Yeah, and it depends. I mean, we're building Just Beverage in 6 months. It's 12,000 square foot retail, and we're building Living Goods. It's 10,000 square foot retail. We said 7 months, but we'll probably finish in 6 months. And that's site. There's a lot of site work, and that's the one thing in the commercial world. You're gonna. I mean, the site work number is a significant number. I mean, it's several $100,000.
Two foot cutting, put 2 foot down.
Right. Pulling 2 feet out. We call that's the pooler. That's the pooler norm. 2 foot out, 2 foot in. That's almost we say in Pooler, we just hope you have bad dirt. Because we hope it isn't horrible dirt. Because all dirt in Pooler is bad. I mean, that's just, it's not a knock on Pooler. We love building Pooler. We love Pooler, but the dirt is just bad dirt. And so you know going in, you're gonna automatically assume 2 foot out, 2 foot in. Now, when we built the Crescent Ball building in Westside Business Park, it was in a flood zone, and you know, it was the last lot on the cul-de-sac. We went 2 foot out, 5 feet in because it was in a flood zone. We had to get it up to 14 feet. And you know, it kind of sits on a hill now, but it kind of went away because it's 40,000 feet. But again, you hope for 2 foot out, 2 feet in. Yes, sir.
I'm from a different state, and I've got a couple of questions that probably don't make any sense. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. You talk about rezoning. Do a lot of planned unit developments down here?
Yeah, there's a lot of others in there.
So a lot of negotiation with the city over what it is you can do and what it is you can't do.
Yeah, well, typically in a PUD, I mean, a PUD is more difficult to rezone. Now, we worked with a client on Jimmy DeLoach that had some land in a PUD that we were able to pull out of the PUD and get it rezoned to commercial. It had a commercial designation within the PUD, but typically trying to pull out of a PUD is going to be more difficult than just a straight rezoning.
How difficult do they tie you down in the PUD here? In Florida, they tie you down to almost everything. Are they that bad here typically?
What they'll do in the PUD, what a lot of our clients have done is, it depends on what you want to do, but they're going to allocate X amount of commercial acres within that PUD. Okay, so you might be able to move it around within the PUD. You might be able to increase density over here and take it away over here, or however it's working within that. But once you go back, it really depends on the plan too, and a hell of a lot depends, but it depends on public resistance to what you want to do. If you want to go out to Highlands right now and try and get some stuff rezoned from in the PUD to industrial built warehouses, you're going to get some resistance because all the residents in Highlands are starting to fight it. If you go to Bloomingdale, Georgia, and think you want to get some industrial land, something rezoned to that, it's not going to happen. I mean, that community is not going to go for it.
Not yet.
Well, the politics are going to have to change, or the state's going to have to come in and take them over, because they'd rather have, farmland. They just don't want growth. So that's part of that rezoning aspect of it. And a lot comes down to, just like everything, it's politics.
One more question. Do you guys do mitigation of wetlands up here? And if so, what does that cost per acre these days?
Yeah,
for
well,
quality wetland?
Yeah, I mean, it varies, but to mitigate an acre is 20, 25, 30 grand an acre. And
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad. And then you have to give up an acre somewhere else.
Florida's 70.
Yeah. Everything is supposed to be Florida. That's why you're in Georgia now.
There's a-
Yes.
So y'all talked a lot about projects out in Pooler and Richmond Hill. Are you doing stuff in town these days, or have you done in the last?
Oh,
few
yeah,
years?
yeah.
How's that going?
We're working with a number of clients in town. I'm trying to think, in specific in Savannah and Chatham County, we're working with a client now with something on White Bluff, a shop building. Yeah, I mean, we build
In
all.
downtown?
No, in downtown, we don't do historic reservation. That's just not, there's plenty of people out there that specialize in that. That's not really what we do. We're more into the sites. Now, we do redevelopment, if it's into, something, but we don't really do any historic reservation.
We do new construction.
Right.
Our
Yeah.
project is
And
not-
we've done, we've done a lot of, we've done some tear downs and stuff like that, but as far as the renovations, we don't do that. Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain, I've run into the 2 clients recently that we've closed on the lane, we're ready to find construction in Fort Whitworth. They changed something about where the water sewer taps come from, and they've been hit with like $200,000 bills right before they get a
Really?
final permit.
I'm sorry, Abby, that was the water taps? Fort Whitworth was at
This is right in Rice.
capacity at one point, and then they did the expansion. But one of the issues that come up, and that's all part of that due diligence of what Chris was talking about, and those are things you need to,
Well, we see in the builder, I won't say who, I was like, to my client, why didn't you know this? I
Right.
mean, this is $200,000 that wasn't in the budget.
Right.
And
Again, that's the utilities. I mean, when we are working on, that's the first thing we do, call, kind of, hey, where's utilities, what's
yeah, you gotta get a lot of money.
the fees, come on.
hey,
But really, it's something that people don't think utilities, again, in the residential world, you run your water and sewer out 5 feet, you connect, but when you go to commercial, there's, like, at Just Beverage, it used to be a car wash there, so there are mega tap fees already paid, and if you're doing a laundromat, you better know that you're gonna have excessive tap fees when you do a laundromat. Well, now we're trying to pair, those tap fees with a laundromat, because that would make sense, because those tap fees are already paid.
Well, I called the builder, and he said in January, prior to that, they used to lease the water from Savannah, and they don't anymore. So now they just kind of price their own.
Yeah, I mean,
price.
there's-
I was
yeah,
like,
because they increased their capacity or whatever it was, and they were out of water.
Yeah, but somebody should have known that.
yeah, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah, certainly they should have known that.
One more dumb question, or maybe two. You guys have impact fees,
Yes, depending on the municipality, yes.
and the county doesn't have them?
Chatham County, yes, they have impact fees.
And, for roads or for what? What do they have?
Well, I mean, there's impact fees for fire, roads, I'm trying to think of the dance studio. I mean, yes, they have impact fees for the services that you're gonna use, the roads, the fire,
What do they typically run for residents?
I don't know on residential.
And then the other thing is, do you have proportionate share where you have to, if you're a developer, you develop a project and you're gonna have a significant impact on a particular intersection, do you have to pay for the improvements to that intersection before you can build?
Again, on a residential basis, I don't know. On a commercial,
It's
yeah,
like
like,
commercial, let's do it.
yeah, that's one of the things I had written down I didn't mention. When you're, a lot of times, when you do a traffic study, we were working with a client on Jimmy DeLoach that they made them put in a decel lane. Now, they also wanted a median cut, and they were granted a median cut because Jimmy DeLoach is not under DOT's authority, it's actually under Pooler's authority, so it was easier to get a median cut. But yeah, a lot of, in that situation on Jimmy DeLoach, they made them put a decel lane in. And the decel lane, it ended up costing about $100,000 extra, but we knew about it prior to the purchase of the property.
You're referring to, like, if you do a development, they make you put up, traffic lights or
Okay.
something, then are you gonna get reimbursed, or you had to run the water line, or you gonna get reimbursed from other people?
Or it could be something like this, part of the road needs to be 4-lane, and you're doing a project there, and you're gonna create a traffic impact, so they make you take part of the 4-laning, and they segregate that money off until they sell enough, get enough money to do the 4-laning.
I've seen it with water and sewer extensions, I've not seen it with roadways. Have you seen it with roads or Rex?
I've seen what they squeeze, to get your permit, you have to put sidewalks in and things like that.
Yeah, I've not seen it with wider. I don't think
But
anybody ever
not
got here
more
to do a
expensive
public
thing
road.
like 4-laning or.
Yeah, we've not experienced that.
No, but
You guys get off good.
Hey, don't say that.
Yeah. That's right.
Us who haven't seen what you've seen in Florida, don't think it's so good.
Abby, going back to what you were talking about with that due diligence, and one of the things we talk about, an advocate for you, us as a bill, it is absolutely, this is one of the most amazing things. And Chris' story about someone bought an out parcel in front of a big box and could not build on that site, could not build their property. I mean,
They could build what they wanted.
yeah, they could not build what they wanted after they closed on that parcel.
Well, then it comes down to town hall meetings. And
That didn't-
it's-
That isn't even town hall.
No.
That is
That was-
100% up to that grocery store sitting there.
Somebody dropped the ball on that.
But see, to put a little plug in for Queensborough too, you also have the banker engaged. We would like to engage on the beginning and vice versa, because, we're not gonna fund until you have your final permitting.
Right.
And that's neat, for someone to come out and walk this hard.
Right. No, I agree with you.
And then it's.
That was a
developed.
ball drop there for sure.
And that's happened a lot.
I'm a commercial real estate appraiser, and like I said, I've been appraising property along with us for 25, 30 years. And I'll tell in all of my real estate appraisals, and this is the importance of due diligence, and I have it in the letter up front, we really don't know what that land's worth until you do due diligence. What's the elevation? What's the dirt like? What's it gonna cost to run utilities? You don't know anything about that site until you figure that out. And once you get that, then you got an idea. Because this is what's so important is your site work costs. I mean, when you compare sites, you should really be comparing pad ready site to pad ready site when you go do it. Because raw dirt to raw dirt, there's so many unknowns that it's just about impossible to compare.
All right, we have a matrix that we plug all these numbers in. So when we look at sites with our clients, we see a pad ready site is at the top, and then we got this one with 5 stacks and this one with 8 stacks, and all we care about is the number at the top. Because ultimately, if you're going to build on it, you want to know, hey, what's that site as a buildable site cost? Not, hey, I want to buy that swamp and turn it into a buildable site. And often that's what happens. And again, it's just a lack of knowledge of what they're doing, and that's why we're all sitting here today.
They see a good deal.
So how long do you due diligence period should be then?
Well, it depends. I mean, some of them can be 60 days, some of them might be 120 days. I mean, again, the problem with the market is there's so few sellers and so many buyers. You're going to be, that seller might say, I'm not giving you 120 days. And,
On a 30-acre site, like you mentioned there, you're going to need 120 days because it's going to take that long. I mean, the surveying crew to do the topo, the boundary, and everything else will take a lot of
I'm
time.
going to the contract right now, can't you get a surveyor to get out there?
call Dewitt Tilton Group, we'll get a survey.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing. We deal with so many people. I mean, really, we can get to people faster because we deal with them every day.
Who controls wetlands around here?
The Corps of Engineers.
You don't have a state agency that does that?
Alton Brown is kind of my opinion.
He's the expert.
guy.
Yeah, he's the expert.
ALTO, Brian.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, I want to be an advocate for you guys. I own some property that I've had for a number of years, and I've looked at it different times, and it's hard to stay focused on it. I ran into Chris, and I'll tell you, in probably 7 to 8 days, they had a performer kind of laid out to me, just taking a napkin and drawing on a piece of paper what I wanted to do. Outside the site work, I haven't pulled the trigger on anything, and then in turn, we're now talking to a laboratory to do some soil sampling or whatever. Now, I mean, they made the process pretty simple from an entrepreneur standpoint of, can I get this thing ready to rent and there's an opportunity to make some money? And I'll tell you, they checked a lot of boxes for me that allowed me to stay focused on the bigger picture.
And we may have found you a tenant too. So.
And then they have come back and found
You need a banker?
But we often find a lot of people, tenants looking for properties, and we have some people that are looking to build buildings. Now, we had met John and talked about building 10,000 square foot, and sure enough, somebody's looking for 10,000 square feet in Richmond Hill. Now, they're probably not going to be able to find what they want, so hopefully we'll be able to build a suit and get them with an actual tenant. So that's also something that we're always having a commercial appraisal side, not really necessarily tied to our business, but within the same heads. We often have the capability of matching tenants with investors and builders and lots, and so it's nice to have.
Can you talk a little bit about like tax statements for Savannah Economic Development? Now I'm doing one in Bryan County right now too. Do you see a lot of companies coming in for the tenants being able to?
Yeah, I'm not real familiar with the amount of tax abatements, but I will tell you this. There's a lot of places, and I know we're in Savannah, but there's a tract of land in Jasper County, Riverport, that I'm sure everybody knows about. And, it's really a nice place because it's not far from the port. It's wide open. The dirt's probably just bad. But the problem is the taxes are so bad over there. And we are actually working with somebody now that I'm from Jasper County, and we're going to sit down and work on some tax abatements. But it's imperative to promote growth and to promote development that you're able to get some tax abatements to get those people in there. And with Riverport, I don't know how many thousands of acres it is, but there's nobody in there right now. So in order to get somebody there, they're going to have to do some kind of tax abatement.
They'll pay the property taxes for 10 years.
Well, and furthermore, I mean, if you can really get the economic authority, and there's not one in Jasper County, develop more, let them build the building and lease it back for 10 years. That will spur growth.
Or we can deed it over to them for
That's
pleasure
right.
and they give it back.
That's right.
And there's also, well, there's that and the tax credits, depending upon what you bring in. We've done stuff up in rural areas. I think it's certain counties, and I don't know what Bryan and Effingham, but I know up in the country, it's up to 4,000 employees, $4,000 per employee, their job that you create, different things, which makes, that's why they go up there. I don't know, obviously, Bryan County, the development authority can
This is
tell you everything they need.
All right, guys, it's 10 minutes to 1. If anybody has any other questions, we'd be happy. We'll be here. We want to thank everybody for taking out time. We know everybody's busy. We hope we at least shed a little bit of information on what you guys are potentially sitting at this table for. And furthermore, if you don't have our card, get it. Call us anytime. If you have a client, an associate that needs help, you know, obviously we want to build buildings, but we also want to educate people and help people because that's what the world's all about. All right. Thank you, guys. Ted, how you doing? Nice to see you. Chris Tilton. Thank you for coming by.
Thanks for hooking me up.
Thank you so much.
We are. I just walked down the bus shop.